Wake up in the morning, get my grind on. Hop in the shower, brush my teeth and get my shine on. Hey, Scholar Mac, we taking trips to different time zones. I feel like E.T. way these bitches trying to follow home. Wake up in the morning, get my grind on. Hop in the shower, brush my...
Welcome everybody to Living on Purpose podcast. We're your host, James Hagler, and myself, Jason Wilson. Tonight we have John Scott. He's the CEO of Enetlivetv. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey guys, thanks a lot for having me. Really appreciate being here.
No doubt.
It's great to have you, man. So, John, we like to find out from our guests, how you became the person that you are today. So let's start from the beginning. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, originally I wanted to be a veterinarian. My grandfather was a vet, and I wanted to be a vet. And then I don't know. One day I decided I didn't want to be a vet, and broadcasting was all I could think about. I had taken one of those, those aptitude tests, those things you take in high school that tell you what you're supposed to be, right, or what best fits you. So I grew up in Kentucky, and I'd been working on a farm since I can remember. And when I filled it out, I was excited because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be, but something was going to tell me what I was going to be. And that was good enough, right? So I did the test, did all of that stuff. The results come back and it says your top 2 career choices should be a farmer or a teacher. And my mom was a teacher, and I had my mom in class that year. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. And a farmer, no way. So after that test, I remember just laying one night, just laying in bed as a kid, as a high school senior, just praying and thinking and wondering and what am I going to do? And then broadcasting popped in my head. It was the week before I graduated. Had no clue what I was going to go to college to do. Wasn't very sure where I was going. Broadcasting popped in my head. Next day, I was at the library going through the Dewey Decimal System back before everything was digital. And I got some books on broadcasting, and didn't look back. By the time I graduated high school, I was working at 3 different radio stations, and worked my way through college in radio and in broadcasting. And to make a very long story short, I went from that. I was playing racquetball at the same time. I turned pro in racquetball and was in corporate life at that time, knowing that I needed that training because I wanted to be a CEO. And I was good on the air and in broadcasting, but I didn't have the management skills. I didn't have the sales skills and all of those things. So I transitioned into corporate and was there for several years. And during that time, I turned professional in racquetball. And it was in those days where we wanted to be on television, but we couldn't. It was racquetball. We couldn't afford to be on television. Heck, we could hardly afford to have events at the time. But I had an experience in streaming. This was back in 2006. So streaming was just kind of becoming a thing, but nobody really knew what it was. And it was expensive as can be. And so I started a little streaming company to broadcast racquetball so people at home could watch. And after about a year and a half, I realized, wait a second here. If I can make money streaming racquetball of all things, then I should try other sports. And so that's back in 2006 is kind of the genesis of Enet. We started in professional racquetball under the name IRT Network, which stood for International Racquetball Tour. But yeah, we started there, and then we started after that first year or so, we started adding other sports, started teaching people the importance of streaming, the importance of having an audience. And then YouTube came along and Facebook and offered the same streaming services for free. So that knocked us back quite a bit until, shortly after, as we're moving out of COVID, more and more people are wanting to be in charge of their own streams and of their own content and of their own commercials and so forth and so on. And so after, over the last 2 years or so, we've been ramping back up, working with you guys, working with other sports like badminton, volleyball, pickleball, which is, believe it or not, the worst name in sports for a sport, but also the fastest growing sport in the United States. So yeah, that's kind of the cliff notes, if you will, of the entire, from high school, started broadcasting and just kind of worked my way through it. And if it wasn't for professional racquetball, I would probably still be a call center sales manager or something like that.
So how far did you get? How far did you get in racquetball?
My highest ranking was 22. I was the 22 ranked singles pro in the world, and then I was in the top eight in pro doubles. I was much better in doubles because my backhand was awful.
You ever get a chance to play against Jim Jacobs?
I know Jim. I didn't get a chance to play with him, but and through being on the air with the IRT network, I believe I met him a couple different times.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious though, John. So you started streaming service in 2006, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how many?
Back in 2000.
Okay, so how many people did you have watching the stream at that time?
You know, it's a funny thing. Racquetball and a lot of other sports that seem small they seem like that because they are small, especially here in the States. But what streaming offered us is an opportunity into the homes of people globally. And so when you look at it, yes, the US was our biggest audience. And after our first couple of events, people could catch on and they were seeing what we were doing. And we would cap out our first couple years. We would have maybe 5,000 up to 10,000 people watching. And then I actually owned the tour after a while. I bought the whole tour and combined it all into one. And I sold it back in 2017 to another group of investors. And at that time, our biggest events were fetching between 50 and 100,000 people watching at one time.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's racquetball. People don't even know it still exists. Lots of people don't know, especially the millennials. They, the younger group.
Yeah, they don't know.
What's racquetball? I don't know. But yeah, globally, it's huge in South America. In Bolivia, it's the #2 participation sport behind soccer. Lots of other countries, and by going to the streaming, like the rest of the world is doing, it allowed us to capture a significant amount of more people. And then back then, the internet connectivity around the world wasn't that great. So as we kept going through the years, other people started getting better internet and have the ability to watch, because back then there wasn't fiber. It was barely better than dial-up back then.
Right.
Yeah.
And so as that progressed, just through that natural succession, if you will, we started accumulating more and more and more.
Okay. So, man, I mean, it's been a pleasure getting to know you through James and this wonderful sport of boxing. Have you always been into boxing?
Oh, my gosh. Yes, I have. As far back as I can remember, Tuesday night fights was a staple in my life. It was the only time from the time I can remember until the time after college. It was the only time that when I would be with Dad, especially, like early elementary school, middle school, that was the only night I was allowed to stay up late on a school night. And we always watched it. I can remember the premiere, the first fights of like a James Thunder, all of these crazy stories, but also the best times I've ever had with my dad. Not to throw him under the bus, but back then he had one of those scramblers. So any pay-per-view,
we had one of those too. We had like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, and so from an early age, I loved boxing. When I started broadcasting, my dream was to be Michael Buffer. I just love Michael Buffer, and when I've done boxing, ring announcing, and I just think that when I want to grow up, if I even knew there was a chance to be able to be inside of a boxing ring or anywhere around it, curtains. That's all I want. I'm there. Nothing else matters. So all my life, I've really been into boxing.
That's good. That's dope.
Who is your favorite professional fighter from the 80s?
Evander Holyfield.
Okay, I got.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that's a little later than the 80s. He really didn't.
He was in Olympics. No, I guess he was in Olympics because he got a raw deal. Yeah, I think he got a raw deal when he went to the Olympics. Was it 90? I think it was. It was 90. The 90 Olympic team he was on, I think.
92 maybe or something. Yeah,
like
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're going to go 80s, of course, I have to say Hagler.
Yeah.
But yeah, of all time, Evander Holyfield or George Foreman. I found out about George Foreman when he came back, and my dad would tell me these stories, and he was a mythical character for me almost. And when he hit Michael Moorer with that shot, I've never heard my dad scream like that in my life. I thought it was my mama seeing a snake or something. You know, it was.
No, because I was rooting for him too. But Mike, I liked it, Michael Moore, and I think that Michael, he should have stayed light heavyweight and dominated that division because everybody would move up. Roy Jones, James Toney, he would have got that big fight that he was searching for. He just didn't have the patience to stay there. But I thought he was way better as a light heavyweight than he was a heavyweight. When he went up to heavyweight, he was just too slow. He lost all his pizzazz. Yeah, I just wasn't feeling him as a heavyweight.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably the atmosphere around the heavyweight division versus really any of the other ones, especially light heavyweight. But you're right.
He wasn't getting no big money fights. There was nobody there. But all he had to do is stay and dominate. Right.
Yeah, that was one of those positions with him where people, the people moving up that are champions, moving up weight classes, he was in that perfect spot to have them come to him.
Exactly.
And then he would have been able to grind most of them up.
Oh yeah, definitely. I believe so. So who you think will win, Jake Paul or Butterbean?
So I'm not a fan of Jake Paul at all. As a boxing fan, especially, I'm not a fan. Mostly because his mouth and his, the way that he acts. But it's kind of, he's not a terrible boxer.
He's not.
My heart says Butterbean.
That's
but
true.
My wallet would have to probably say Jake Paul.
But it is true because you got to think about it. Butterbean was a real fighter, and he was fighting 4-round fights. And he was, Butterbean was
the king of the 4 rounds.
Huh?
I said he was the king of the 4-rounders. That's what they used to call him.
He's the highest paid 4-round fighter that I know.
Yeah. I met Eric Butterbean. His name's Eric Ash. I met him once in Vegas at a racquetball thing I was doing. And I'm sure there's all kinds of stories, but he was sitting out in the heat. Well, it was outdoor racquetball on the Vegas Strip. And he was sitting out there, and I don't know who it was. Someone was bringing him plates of food from somewhere. He was sitting in this big chair with the muscle shirt thing on, and it was one of the most comical things. And I was scared to death to go talk to him. And I was a fan, I knew who he was. Finally, I did, and he was one heck of a guy. But yeah, I would really want to see him knock Jake out flat. I just don't think
it was funny because I did a radio show with Tim Witherspoon. It's called Knuckle Up, and we was talking about that. Tim was like. He was like, Butterbean would kill Jake Paul because he was a real fighter. He said he met Butterbean. He said Butterbean was a real cool guy, nice demeanor about him, and he really believed that Butterbean. He made me think about it because I was like, yeah, he's telling the truth because he was in some real battles and he came out victorious.
Yeah, as long as age hasn't caught up to him where, he can take a hit and stay up, because sometimes the older you get, Evander Holyfield showed that in the celebrity match or the deal that he just had, the exhibition.
Right.
He didn't get hit with super solid shots, and he was, I hated to see him kind of stumble around. So if Butterbean has all of that with him, he could hit Jake Paul to the side of the shoulder and probably knock him silly if he can connect.
I know.
Yeah.
What's your favorite all-time fight?
Man, there's so the most memorable for me was Tyson Holyfield 2, just because of how all that broke out, shook down. I think anybody who watched that fight live will think, you'll never forget that particular fight.
Right.
But to get a little cliche, it would have to be probably Ward Gotti. Once it was all done, I didn't really know what I was seeing when I was seeing it.
Right.
There was a lot about boxing I didn't really get. It was super exciting. Everything was happening at the same time. It was one of those things that when it's over, you don't really know what you saw until you have a chance to process it.
Right.
And through the years, it holds up against time. And then when Arturo died and all of that, it's a heck of a story. It was a heck of a fight. So I would say probably that one would be my favorite of all time.
That was good. They fought like 3 times, right?
Yeah, I think they went around 3 times. Yeah. And a close second for me would be when Spinks knocked out Zab Judah, because I wasn't a fan of Zab and I was at that fight mostly because I wanted to see Don King and Ellie.
Right.
But it was in St. Louis. The crowd was going crazy. And then Spinks knocked him silly, and it was the greatest thing ever to see. Like I said, I wasn't a big fan of Zab Judah at the time.
Right.
John, in the world of sports, especially lately, we've seen a lot of stories about athletes suffering from mental health situations. Have you ever dealt with a mental health issue in your life along the way?
Wow. Well, that is quite a question. Yes, I have been around the mental health world for quite a long time with some very good or bad, depending on how you see it, exposure to all different sides of that, from family members to, I think you guys know, I'm also a firefighter. I live in a small community. Everybody here is on a volunteer, we're all volunteer firefighters. And if you're on duty, it doesn't matter what you're doing. When the tones go off, you go. Now, I say all of that to say my tougher issues within the mental health issue has been there, running those calls, and you can only imagine. In the sports world, I have been directly involved with getting the yips, with a lot of that, basically where you just have that mental block and you can't perform. I was trying to qualify for the U.S. team in Arizona, took a timeout, and when I came back in, I don't know what happened. I could not hit the ball without skipping. In racquetball, you have to hit the wall before you hit the floor. Right. It was like I'd never played before. It was the most bizarre mental whatever, and then it got in my head, and then it was a big breakdown that I had. And so, I've seen it from all kinds of different angles. The biggest advice for anyone in the sports world, I would say, would be what my coach would say, and that's live in the now. You've got to live in the now. Don't beat yourself up for whatever sport you're in, whatever just happened. Always give your opponent credit for a good shot or a good hit or a good punch, right? A lot of people beat themselves up because they think they're supposed to always be doing great. But if somebody else has a good whatever, it's not your fault. They did something great. And so I say that because a lot of people that struggle in the mental health world with sports live too much in that past. They're too worried about the other person and don't realize that they're getting beat. They're not losing. They're allowing themselves to get beaten. If you can flip that and kind of work on that live in the now, it helps overcome a lot of that. Hopefully that answers your question without getting too granular.
Oh yeah.
It does. But you're right. You gotta always, you can't live in the past. That'll just destroy you, because we all make our mistakes. And like you say, you get hit with a good shot, that's okay. All right. My dad used to tell me, he say, hey, you know what? You're in that ring, you're gonna get hit. If you're not getting hit, you're in there running.
Right. You're not doing your job if you're not getting hit.
That's right.
Yeah, I've been around. I'm an advocate. I do some talks and so forth on the mental health side. I've been exposed to that through family members with bipolar, a family member who committed suicide. And so, like I said, at all different angles, I've been involved or been around that side of life pretty much all my life.
What do you do to stay on top of your game mentally in business?
I think the most important thing is, one, not overthinking things. People, regardless of the size of the business, the idea is always the same, right? There's certain things, regardless of how much or how little money that you're making, You got to do some of the simple things all the time. And to me, the most important is structure, right? For me, structure is that foundation that I need for the business, to have the right people around me. Am I taking care of myself? Because I think I can't take care of anybody else if I'm not taking care of myself. And am I looking ahead? Meaning, do I have what I need to have taken care of now? And what possible things can come at me that I need to be prepared for? And so, you know, for me in business, I would say the most important is that structure or that routine. I start every day. My alarm goes off at 4:45 every day. I don't care when I went to bed. I'm getting up at 4:45. I'm out of the shower by 5. I've had my breakfast and cup of coffee by 5:15, et cetera, all the way to, have I made my bed, and are the dishes clean, et cetera. And it may seem minute, but when you can get yourself into specific schedules, especially at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, then your bookends of the day start and end under your control. You have control of those bookends, and that helps, at least for me, stay on track and stay focused, because during the day, you never know what's going to come at you. But for me, if I stay on my schedule and keep my foundation exactly how it needs to be, and keep the right people around you, not yes men, but the right people that can tell you no or tell you you're wrong. Those things to me are the key fundamentals that you really need to do anything in life, but especially with business.
Yeah, you said something really, really important that I've seen from, you know, elite performers, anywhere from, you know, top performers in sports to top speakers in the world. They have a set schedule. Like Mark Wahlberg, I mean, he goes to bed at 9:30 at night and he wakes up at 3:30 every single day. And you wonder how he, you know, acts, owns a health club chain and does all of these other activities. But I mean, he has a set schedule that he does every single day and he gets everything done.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Talking about the Tuesday night fights, I remember it's, you know, sometimes in life you'll hear a saying or you'll hear somebody say something and they can mean it in such a benign way. Bobby Ches, I think he was a heavyweight, then he was on as an announcer, and then he kind of tried to make a comeback. I think his name was Bobby Ches for USA on the USA Network. Yeah, so he was so he was asked after or going into one of his last fights, why do you train like you do? And kind of similar to what you were saying about Mark Wahlberg, is he got up at like 3:30 every day and he was done with his road work by like 5 or whatever that was. Don't get lost in the details. The thing that he said, though, that has always stuck with me is he said, if I get up an hour before my competition every day, then I am 5 hours every week better than what my competition was. For whatever reason, that just always stuck with me. It always stuck with me to be better, to continue to succeed, and to put yourself ahead of those competing against you. You got to be disciplined, and you got to figure out what they're not doing. And most of the time they're sleeping and you're awake and you're training and being disciplined to get where you need to go. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable is one of the most important traits in life that I think anyone can learn.
Mike Tyson said the same thing. Mike was like, they was asking, why you up at 4 a.m. running? You know, he said, because I know my opponent's not up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody's edge. It's the type of edge that you need, you know. And Bobby Chaz, he gave my uncle his first loss. That was a real good fight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Bobby Chaz was middleweight at first, and he fought Robbie Sims, my uncle. And that was my uncle's first loss. He was the first one to knock my uncle down. Because my uncle switched in the middle. He switched in the inside and got caught. And that's something that you don't do. You don't switch in the inside. If you're going to switch, switch outside. And he ended up switching inside, and Bobby caught him with a good punch. He was so frustrated. That was a real good fight. Ever get a chance, watch that on YouTube. That was a real good fight, man.
I definitely will. I didn't mean to bring up sore memories for the family there.
No, not at all. That's so long ago, but that fight sticks out in me. You know what I mean? Because that was a real good fight between them two. You know, same thing with Iran Barkley. He fought Iran Barkley, and that was a war for him. and it was real good fights that they had.
Yeah, that's just one of those things. I mean, it could have been Mills Lane, it could have been, Jim Lampley, but he said it, and I'll never forget it. And I've thought about it constantly. I mean, and that was, 30 years ago or something like that, maybe longer.
Yeah. Oh.
John, have you had any mentors that you look up to?
Yeah, I think it's something that's important. If you don't have anybody above you that you're looking up to, a lot of times it's hard to improve, it's hard to be pushed, and it's hard to be held accountable. So having mentors is extremely important. Growing up through life, of course, you have your family and your mom and dad. I've had a bit of a different, structure of life, if you will, from on-air broadcasting, college sports, corporate life, and all of those things. But through my life, I've had a particular friend. He's about 20 years or so now older than me. He was a fan of mine in racquetball back when I played on tour. And from a business standpoint, he is one of the guys who retired when he was 50. He made his wealth, and he's willing to teach other people if they want to learn. And he scooped me up under his wing. And to this day, he calls me every Monday at noon to check with me. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. On Mondays at noon, he's calling just to ask how I am. And so he has been a long time business mentor and one of the more important people in my foundation.
That's great, man. This has been an awesome interview, John. Man, is there a last minute thought that you can leave our guests?
Last minute thought. You know what? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big advocate of being nice. I know it sounds so silly, but I always tell people, be kind. Even when somebody's not being kind with you, just be kind. A lot of times on my Facebook, I'm one of the older guys in the world. I have Facebook and LinkedIn. Those are my two. But I will just post, be kind. There's so much hatred in the world. There's so much baloney going on. And there's so much uncertainty, especially now with Ukraine. And we forget to be nice and we forget to be kind. And so I guess I say that to say this. For me, it's important to remember that the right thing and the convenient thing are not always the same thing. And when you look at a situation in your life, there's a right and there's a convenient, and sometimes they don't match. And that's when you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's a great thought, man. Thank you so much, John. How can people find you on? Yeah. How can people find you on social media?
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. So we're on social. The company Enetlive is on, all of the things, the Twitters and the Instagrams and Facebook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, online at www.enetlive.tv. And check us out. I'd love to chat with anybody who wants us to come out and wants us to do some streaming, wants to watch the show with you guys in August. That's going to be huge. Check us out all across enetlive.tv, online, www.enetlive.tv.
So you got a judo thing coming up too, right? Judo.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, we just got an agreement with USA Judo, and they're under the organization of Team USA, or the United States Olympic Committee. And we're doing all their national events. And we start next week in Lansing, Michigan, broadcasting their junior national event. And then we also are doing professional badminton, which starts in April. And of course, platform tennis, which we've been with platform tennis now for almost a decade. And we're getting ready to wrap up their season.
Yeah, we got to tell all those guys they got to get on Athletes TV. Put your videos on Athletes TV. You can make money with that. It's a real good platform, and I think they're going to take off pretty soon. He's doing a lot of things with that Athletes TV, and I like it. I know it's a little like YouTube, but I think it's a little better because it's all about sports. That's it.
Well, it is, and from what I understand, there's a lot less censorship, meaning you don't have to worry if you put something up that they're going to want to take it down because something was seen in the background or somebody yelled something in the background, et cetera, et cetera. But it gives you more control of your destiny.
Exactly.
And that's one of the reasons I like them. They're pretty awesome, and kind of, you know, it's kind of an emerging market for what they're doing and giving a platform and opportunity for a lot of people to create income.
No doubt. No doubt.
Okay, John, man, thank you so much for being on our show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey.
Thank you, man.
Guys, you know what? You're a huge blessing. James, when you and I first talked, I couldn't tell you how excited I was. The first call I made was to my dad, whose health isn't that great. And he and I had one of the best and most fun talks that we've had in a long, long time, just in getting to talk with you. And you know, Jason, man, you're obviously the brains behind the operation. I'm just kidding.
He's my guy. He's my go-to guy, man.
I love you guys, man. I'm so excited to be working with you. We're excited as a team here, and good things are right around the corner.
Absolutely. We believe it. We believe in you too, John.
Believe it, and you will achieve it.
Oh,
yes,
sure.
sir.
That's how I go.
Absolutely.
Okay, man. Take care.
All right.
All right.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Have a great night. Thanks for having me.
You too. Enjoy.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Living on Purpose podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel.